Kim here. Thank you so much for joining me. We're doing a different type of discussion. I received devastating news yesterday that a longtime client of mine passed away. And it hit me so much harder than I ever could expect. And I think this video is part me processing what has transpired, and also to open the dialogue with fellow readers, fellow healers, psychics, for when these things come up, how do we navigate them? Some of you know that I am a professional tarot reader, and I've been doing it a while. And I do also, through my Poised to Leap membership on Ko-fi, I mentor those who are seasoned readers who are just starting out their professional journeys on offering readings professionally. Or maybe they've been doing it a while and they want to venture to a virtual side of offering readings. I mentor. And I mentor folks who are intermediate to advanced readers who are ready to go pro. All sorts of folks. And we've talked about all the ways at which a reader-client or client-reader relationship comes to an end. We've talked about when we've had to, as readers, have to terminate a relationship with the client, or have it to start to, or you start to back away. We've talked about that in our Poised to Leap membership, and I think I even have one video here on the channel on that topic. We've talked about when clients decide to, fire us as, readers, healers, psychics. It happens. But I haven't really seen much talked about when clients pass away. I'm going to get emotional. Oh my God. I cried a lot yesterday. It was a very, very emotional day yesterday. Highs and lows yesterday. I'll get into that in a moment. And if you see me looking down, it's because I had some notes. I want to make sure that I stay on course with this one, okay? So here's the thing about clients and readers. I feel that the majority of the time we don't know that someone has passed, a client has passed. They don't know when a tarot reader necessarily has passed, unless it's, a tarot reader that they know and love on social media, and that tarot reader or someone on their behalf puts an announcement on their social media platforms or on their website that the reader passed away. But if they're contacting a reader on a hotline, they may not ever really know what happened to that reader. Now, with that being said, if you look at it from the client, from our vantage point to the client, we oftentimes don't know when someone has passed. We assume, and I think it's just for our own healing and well-being in a situation, that the client may have moved on, found a new reader, moved to a different stage of life, doesn't need readings anymore. And there's oftentimes we hear back from clients, we ain't heard from them. We call them long lost clients. We ain't heard from them in a long time. And they pop up. And we assume that that's the case. But, it could be that our clients have transitioned, especially like clients who come through on the hotlines, or clients you didn't maybe start out with a personal relationship and then start reading for them on a professional basis. You may not ever know. And I think that is probably the usual of what goes on. I don't know if it's the usual to be notified that a client has passed. I'm going to share with you my story. Okay. A very recent story as of within the last 24 hours story. I'm sharing this with you for a multitude of reasons, okay? First, to help me process. I did a lot of crying yesterday and a lot of soul searching on whether or not I wanted to record a video on this, but I do. I adored this client. I'm going to protect her privacy. And we'll just, I like music, so we'll call her Melody. Okay, we'll call her Melody. I'm going to protect her identity, but I wanted to share because I needed to get it off my chest and memorialize this time. This time I am grieving. And I also wanted to open up dialogue in a safe space. You all know I love creating, like with these videos, a safe space for us to be able to support one another, leave comments, etc. So that's what we're doing here also. If I do like some pauses, or if you see me looking down, I'm trying to find my words. And you're like, well, what's up? Why are you getting emotional? It's because I read for this client for a year and a half, and it was at least once a month. And it was like through a Zoom type style kind of setting where it's live. She books an hour. I'm throwing cards, we're talking, and eventually you become so close because she's sharing intimate details with me about her life. And I felt this strong connection to her. It was amazing. She found me. It's on one of the platforms I work on. And I just vibed with her. And last year in June of 2024, she started mentioning that she wasn't feeling well. And she attributed it to something like a cold or allergies. And in my gut, I was like, I'm a little worried. But I'm not going to say that. I just kept telling her, you got to prioritize your health, your well-being right now. I kept getting Four of Swords coming up. And I'm never going to just be like, oh, I feel like you're, like something's big coming. But I just kept telling her, I'm like, I see a season of rest for you. And you know what? When the message kept coming through for like 3 readings, one after like 3 months, because I read for once a month. For 3 months, it kept coming up. I said, you really got to slow down. You got to, just take care of you and see a doctor or do what you got to do. And she had been seeing doctors. She's, this is a woman who was healthy. She worked out. She's probably maybe 15 years older than myself, but healthy, full-time worker, spunky, East Coast. I loved her. And I think she loved my West Coast vibe, and we just meshed. Anywho, she kept complaining about it, and it was starting to wear her down, and it worried me because myself personally, when I was 33 years old, I had a pulmonary embolism. That is when a blood clot travels from wherever. For me, I believe in my case, it traveled from my calf and made it all the way up to my left lung. And if it would have went to my brain, it would have been a stroke. If it would have went to my heart, it would have been a heart attack. In this case, it landed in my left lung. And I remember barely being able to breathe. At first, it started out, it feels like a cold or like a respiratory issue. By the time, and I'm a walking miracle, because it was like a week and a half, I'm dealing with progressive symptoms getting worse and worse and worse. By the time I make it to the hospital, I can barely breathe, and I had 29% lung capacity by the time I made it to the hospital. But when it started out, it didn't start out like that. So I have that experience in the back of my mind, and I'm like saying, I just, I know it's this. We're hoping that it's nothing, but, just, well, she only missed one time in that year and a half. And that was last November, December. I just chalked it up to holiday craziness. But she ended up being hospitalized. And it turned out it wasn't something respiratory or like a cold. It was something to do with her heart. And I'm not going to bog down the details of all of that. But all that to say, she was like, you kept telling me about, the Four of Swords. She was starting to also kind of learn some of the card meanings. So, she understands about Four of Swords being about, being in a hospital setting, infirmary, or needing to rest or being forced to rest. She understood that. And she chuckled and she was like, well, I'm not dead yet. And I'm going to keep going. And she had this goal. Oh. So it was November we missed. December we linked up. She had a goal in February of 2025 to return back to work after being in the hospital for a few weeks. And she didn't want to take disability. And I kept telling her, like, no, listen, this is not reader or me. I'm giving you like human to human advice. You're a great worker. Nobody will question your work ethic. You need to prioritize yourself. And you need to take some time off. And that kept coming up. I kept saying, oh, the Four of Swords is just telling me, tell her rest. Work from home if she can. And she listened. And finally, the doctors really started doing tests and wanting to figure things out. But she was confident she was going to return back to work in February. And I'm like, okay, well, that's your goal. You just take it one day at a time. She was weak. She lost a lot of weight from June until December. And the last reading we did, she sent me a message. She said, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. I don't look the same. I lost a lot of weight and I just want to give you a warning. And I'm like, please, you don't need to give me a warning. And she did lose a lot of weight and her voice was very raspy. And I asked her if it was due to medication or anything like that, or if it was what it was. And the doctors they were still in testing. As of today, like, do we even really know? Like, I'm sure with the autopsy or what have you, if her family allows that, they will say, what it is that's the cause. But, like, what is it? Anywho, they didn't even really know. They just knew it was not what we originally thought. It was something else. And my client, in our very last reading, she had made it back to work. She had returned to work. Her boss was so cool. He was like, if you need to work from home, you work from home. Your priority is getting better. She was going to a doctor's appointment. She was starting to drive again. She was working out. She was taking these tests, getting some good results from some of the tests. But there was one test she was very worried about. She was very worried about it in the reading. And we didn't do a health reading. She didn't ask about it. But I was just like, I'm scared too. I don't know why. But we gonna go through this together, one step at a time. And she was like, oh, you always encourage me. And she was scared. It was some sort of like cardiac stress test. Anywho. Well, I didn't think anything of it. We had a reading a couple weeks ago, like towards the end of February. And, we would just meet up once a month. She'd book a reading, we meet up. And another client booked a reading with me yesterday. And I was running errands. I have out-of-town guests coming. And you know what it is to have out-of-town guests coming and your house looks like a bomb hit it and you gotta go and you gotta get stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna get home. I'm gonna sit down, put the groceries away, all the things, right? And I sat down and I opened the message, the order, and the client was like, this is not a reading request. I know Melody. And so what I found out was Melody we'll call her Jazz. Jazz to me. And so Jazz I've been working with as well, but I didn't know that they were connected. And she said, it sounds like she worked with Melody. And she says, I'm placing this order to let you know because Melody loved you, Kim. She loved you. She loved meeting up with you every single month. And I loved it too. And it mattered so much to me that my other client, Jazz, reached out to me and put in an order request just to be able to order with me and let me know what was going on. And she said, Melody passed away, and she didn't know all the details. She just knows that after that test, she ain't heard from her, she ain't seen her. Melody didn't make it back to work. And Melody's father found her in the morning. And you think about all the details. You think about, what did she say? What kind of test? I'm all Googling, like, what kind of test was this? And it shocked me. I go through moments of denial. I go through moments of like, no, this isn't real. And so I'm literally surprising myself by going through moments of grief over a client. And some people are like, well, of course. And other people are like, well, that's silly, keep it professional. And I do. But it hit me. It just doesn't feel real. It's been less than 24 hours. It just doesn't feel real. And so I am just hurt. I couldn't sleep. And just what's so crazy is like the last, I'd say about since this past weekend, I had been feeling this feeling that I get when I can tell something's like not right. And I kept thinking it was like, oh, it's like what's going on, collectively with the politics in America and all that stuff. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I could feel something like something is just not right. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And after I got the news from Jazz, thank you, Jazz. I changed your name too. Okay. I would have never known. And that trips me out. I'd be like, what happened to her? Where is she? And I knew she was going through all these things. And I'm just so grateful that she told me. And then it got me freaking out because I have like 2 other clients, one on Etsy and another on another hotline that are long-standing clients. A lot of my clients, I don't go seeking out new ones. Usually people, we are attracted to each other and I become their reader. They refer me to their friends and family. And then I'm kind of like the reader of these little hubs. And I'm completely okay with that. That's how it is. And I would imagine on Etsy, I probably would, my clients there would probably, I would know, not in every instance, but I would probably get some sort of heads up because I'm referred. Whereas on the different other platforms I work on, I may not have ever known. And I would have been wondering. And, this is a client who's like, oh, I love you. Like she expressed it to me. And I felt that for her. And we would meet up, like it was, her lunchtime. She would, in between work, her lunch break, her hour lunch. And it was just a joke we had, I'm like, oh, I'm with you at work, And yeah, I'm gonna miss her so much. I'm gonna miss her. What a light that lady was. And I just wanted to talk to you all about it because it happened and it happens. In my prior career, these things happen. I was an injury claims adjuster for many years in my prior life. And inevitably, you have a caseload and you're going to deal with insureds and claimants, injured parties. Some die. Not necessarily related to an auto accident. It could be for something else. But there's like this level of professional distance. It still kind of hurts because you call them up and somebody answers the phone, or maybe they don't, and finally you figure out after I've had to like hire someone to go knock on doors for claimants or whoever, like, okay, are they there? What's going on? And I'm like, oh my goodness, we did a public record search. They just passed. Like, oh my God, okay. Or a family member picks up the phone and says, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but they've passed. And you're like, oh, okay. This was different because I know a lot about my clients. They share some of their deepest, darkest secrets. And I feel a sense of care and attachment to them. And so I just wanted to make sure that I talk about it, because maybe there's other people who've talked about it. I haven't done a YouTube or Google search, but I'm like, I'm going to share this with my peeps. And also for my Poised Elite members, if you ever go through something like this or a challenging moment where you're dealing with something with a client, you know how to reach me. You can send me a direct message through Ko-fi, right? You can send me an email at abundantlifetarot@gmail.com. So you're going to have my support, and I'm going to have your back. If you are a subscriber, if you happen to watch this on YouTube, if I decide to publish this at some point, you got my back as well. You leave a comment, you've got the back of the community. We have a beautiful community with Abundant Life Tarot. So, this is a safe space to share. I'm going to give some tips now, just some things I've been thinking about and that I plan to employ. But before I do, I want to share this with you. I asked, will she be willing to be with me? Because I got love for her, and I know she got love for me. And I got the Two of Cups. We talked about this card a lot during our readings. It came up a lot. And I find it interesting. You see that symbol right there? Like, it's a yes card. She is okay now. No more suffering. No more scary tests. No more fighting to feel better for even just a moment. She's okay and she's down for whatever. I love you, Melody. So now, we'll get into some of these tips before we wrap up this video. First tip I want to talk about is take some time off when a loss happens. Now, sometimes a loss may not be full-on death. It could be something happens with the client. They're incapacitated in some way, or they don't have the ability to get readings with you anymore for whatever reason. But with death, especially, give yourself some grace and space to take time off. I have a hard time taking time off. It just so happens that this week my out-of-town guests, or my husband's out-of-town guests, were coming, so I kind of had to back off of working on readings this week because I had a lot going on. But now it's like, no, are you really in a proper headspace to do readings for people? And if you are, great, do them. Last night, after that news, that I was grateful to receive, by the way, I wasn't ready to get back on and do readings. We'll see how I feel today or even this weekend. I'm recording this on a Friday. We'll see. But maybe I just start anew next week. Take some time off so you can just process, just that initial process, even for just a night. try to take some time off. You're a professional reader and you work for a hotline, or you work for a shop, like a actual physical shop, or some other arrangement where someone's relying on you. Let the hotline know, or let their support team know if you end up somehow finding out that the person has passed away. It's not really necessarily a privacy issue, but from a practical and respectful standpoint, and I guess a security point, it is best if you somehow, some way come across this information. For example, one of the hotlines I work on, the clients have the ability to message whether they placed an order with me or not. Not necessarily on other platforms I work on, but for one, I could see someone getting on the hotline and saying, I know that you're my loved one's favorite person. You're her tarot reader, and I should let you know she's no longer with us. Okay. That would probably be a good idea at that point, when you're ready, of course, to then notify the hotline, notify the support person or team of the passing of the client. Okay. I thought I should share that. Find a way to honor your client. Find a way to be able to honor that relationship, that client-reader relationship you had. Whether you pull a card or two, or you light a candle, or you say a prayer, or you do some sort of ritual, or you have some other kind of honoring ritual or routine or process. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Or maybe you journal, or maybe, you go for a nature walk and that's your time with your client. It doesn't have to be something that's elaborate or, this exorbitant way of like, oh, I've got to show up for my, client who passed away. It doesn't have to be that. Sometimes it may be, a nod here and there to them. And let's face it, you have formed a bond, whether you know it or not. Especially my new professional readers. Sometimes you'd be surprised, like how quick a bond can happen. Now, you've got to keep a professional distance and boundary, of course, but we're human. It is bound to happen that there is a connection. And there's nothing wrong with honoring that connection. Extra loving and generous in self-care. Okay? I plan to be. Now, it's going to be difficult because our first guest of 2 is arriving in the next couple of hours, and I've got to figure out how to carve in a little time just to reflect. I find myself just kind of going through the motions since hearing the news of Melody's passing. I had to go to my daughter's school. It was project day. It was a long day at the school. And I'm moving, I'm doing the things, but I found myself daydreaming about Melody and our times together. Her family, just, I don't know. Her nephew that she loved and that she wanted to see this summer. But I do plan on carving some self-care time, taking a bubble bath, spending time with our friend who has made it all the way from the United States to the DR to visit us. And I'm going to relish in just also having some me time and some downtime, and also not feeling the need to do a bunch of videos right now or to do a bunch of readings right now, to take it easy, So that's what I would say, is to be extra loving, nurturing, caring, and generous in your self-care. Don't feel bad about grieving your client. This should go without saying, but I think that sometimes people would feel bad. Like, let's say you only have 1 or 2 interactions with a client, And you may have not formed as long, like a bond as those of us who've had relationships for 2, 3, 4, 5+ years with a client. But it still can hurt. And it still is a shock. It still forces us to face our mortality. It forces us to delve into our humanity. It's a loss. It is a loss. And with loss comes grief and the grieving process. And yeah, you may, again, if someone is talking about, oh, I've done 1 or 2 readings and I'm grieving, I'm not going to knock them for saying that. I'm going to support them, because it takes a lot to say, you know what, this affects me. This affected me. And I cared about this person, even if I only talked to him once or twice. In my case, it was consistently at least once per month for 1.5 years. I have clients I've been working with since the start of my business, back in 2017. I have a few of you that are still with me. And that, God, that I don't know how it would be if it's, God forbid. But this was enough of connection with myself and Melody that we had love for one another. I wanted to see her win on so many levels. And it just took my breath away. She's so healthy. She's going to the gym. She would join clubs, to stay, in community. Like, she was doing the right things. And it just really hurts, Puts life in perspective. Puts it all in perspective. Everything feels a little trivial. So yeah, don't feel bad about grieving your client. Now I'm going to ask you, have you ever experienced a loss of a client before? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the tarot world or the, magical world. It could be in your everyday, like if you have a 9-to-5 traditional kind of job, it could be there. Like what I mentioned to you before, me as a claims adjuster, it happens, but what are your experiences? Do you have any tips that I haven't discussed or covered here in this video? Please share them. Also know that if you've come to this video, it's because you needed to hear this message. And I'm going to leave you with this. You make an impact one relationship at a time. And none of us are promised till tomorrow. So just remember and remember how powerful that connection is, because if something happens, it makes sense. It will make sense that we grieve. It will make sense that we have to process. It will make sense because we're doing this work for real. This is not for play. Some people are in this game for play. They're in this game for clout, for views, clicks and views, as they say. They're in it for money. And some of us do this because we love this, what we do. We love the people we're helping. We got love for the gifts that Spirit has given us to then be able to help others on their journey. And so it's also a reminder that I am human. I am so human. Grief can also make you feel lonely. And so I don't want you to feel lonely. I want us to support each other. Okay? So that's another reason why I want to create this video. Be raw, be real, emotional. I did a lot of crying last night, and I have a feeling that, emotions will bubble up from time to time. But I love my client. I wish her peace in this new phase that she's in. And yeah, let me know what you all think in the comment section down below, okay? All right, I'm going to wrap this up here. This has been long enough. I feel like this has been a therapy session. So thank y'all for those who made it this long. Thank you for listening to Kim's therapy session. Love y'all. You take care of yourselves, okay? Bye.